This is a compilation of over 1 hour of Skyrim relationships explained, so sit back, relax, and grab your popcorn. Let's kick things off with every Skyrim wife explained and ranked in 17 minutes. Skyrim has over 60 women you can marry, but let's be honest. Most of them are glorified merchants who cook you breakfast and stand in your house. The ones that actually matter? There are 8. Today, we're ranking all of them, from the one who comes with a roommate you never asked for to the vampire princess. The entire community has been trying to marry for 14 years. Let's start at the bottom, the love triangle. Camilla Valerius is one of the first people you ever meet in Skyrim, and she might be the most dramatic. She co-runs the Riverwood Trader with her brother Lucan, having traveled all the way from Cyrodiil looking for a better life. She arrived in the middle of a civil war, which she sums up with zero hesitation. So what did I get? Another war. From minute 1, she's restless and trapped, and she knows it. She's also the center of Skyrim's most famous love triangle. Both Faendal, the wood elf archer, and Sven, the local bard, are obsessed with her. Both of them separately approach the Dragonborn and ask you to deliver a forged letter, each one trying to sabotage the other. It's one of the pettiest things in the entire game, and Camilla has zero idea any of it is happening. But here's the thing. If you skip all of that and marry Camilla yourself, you're not escaping the drama. You're inheriting it. Because Faendal, even after losing the girl, will periodically visit your home to see her. Doesn't matter where you live. Doesn't matter how far away you move her. Faendal will show up. Players have come home to find him walking out of the bedroom. The community's solution, almost universally, is murder. Sacrifice him at Boethia's shrine, recruit him into the Blades, and let a dragon handle it, or just stab him in the street. Problem solved. There's also this. Camilla will hire thugs to attack you for stealing, even after she's dead. Even if she's your wife, the contract outlives her. She can't follow you into combat. She brings the same 100 gold a day as every other merchant wife, and her lore is more entertaining than it is deep. She ranks at number 8, not because she's boring, but because every single wife on this list does more. The story surrounding her is genuinely fun. Camilla herself just doesn't do enough. But if you think the love triangle drama ends with her, wait until you hear about the wife who comes with an actual permanent roommate who never leaves, the assassin's wife. Muri is the only wife on this list who hired someone to kill 2 people before she ever met you. She's a Breton alchemist working at a shop called the Hag's Cure in Markarth, and her backstory is one of the darkest in the entire game. She grew up in Windhelm, essentially adopted by the wealthy Shattershield family, best friends with their daughter Nilsine. Then a man named Alain Dufont came into her life. He romanced her, got close to the grieving family through her, stole their prized family heirloom, and disappeared. The Shattershields blamed Muri, accused her of being his accomplice, threw her out of Windhelm with nothing. So she performed the Black Sacrament. She built an effigy out of bones and nightshade and called for the Dark Brotherhood. And when you show up as the assassin sent to fulfill her contract, her reaction is one of the best moments in the game. She genuinely didn't believe it would work. The Dark Brother, my goodness, you're really here. Her primary target is Alain Dufont, but she offers you a bonus. Kill Nilsine Shattershield too, her former best friend, the one who turned on her. Complete both hits and she rewards you with Muri's ring, which makes every potion you create 15% more powerful. For alchemy builds, that ring is genuinely exceptional. Here's where it gets complicated. She can only be married after completing her quest, which requires joining the Dark Brotherhood. Destroy the Brotherhood instead, and she's locked off entirely. She has no follower capability. She stands in her shop, she cooks you meals, she generates gold. That's it. But the community loves her because she fits perfectly. If you're playing an assassin, if you're deep in the Dark Brotherhood questline, Muri makes complete narrative sense as the woman waiting at home. The moral ambiguity of the whole arrangement is the point. She ranks at 7. Compelling story, real depth, just not enough utility to climb higher. The sweet roll dealer. Isolde looks like the most innocent person in Skyrim. She is not. On the surface, she's everything you'd want. Warm, ambitious, standing in the Whiterun marketplace with a dream of buying the local tavern and becoming the greatest trader in Skyrim. Her parents are dead. She promised them she'd make something of herself. She's one of the only Nords in the game who actively defends the Khajiit caravans when everyone else treats them like criminals. She's friendly, she's accessible, and marrying her requires exactly one thing. Bring her a mammoth tusk. That's the whole quest. No dungeon, no boss fight, no moral dilemma. Just a tusk. But here's the kicker. Travel to Sleeping Tree Cave. Find the body of an orc named Ulag and loot the note on his corpse. It's addressed to him from Isolde. She's been running a supply deal with a wanted skooma criminal to harvest sleeping tree sap, the most powerful hallucinogenic substance in Skyrim, and sell it from her market stall in Whiterun, right next to the produce. When you find her and confront her, she is completely unbothered. She offers you the same deal, 150 gold per bottle. She also shows up in A Night to Remember, the Daedric quest where you piece together what you did while blackout drunk. One of the answers? You bought a wedding ring from Isolde for a Hagraven. She sold it without a single question. The community has debated for years whether Isolde is actually aware that sleeping tree sap is essentially a drug, or if she's just a ruthless entrepreneur who genuinely doesn't care what she's selling. Either reading makes her more interesting than she appears. Practically, she's one of the best early game choices. She's in Whiterun, which you visit in the first hour. The tusk is easy to get. She opens a shop, generates gold daily, and cooks you meals. She can't fight, she won't follow you anywhere, but she doesn't need to. She ranks at 6. The secret criminal enterprise just below a cheerful surface is exactly the kind of hidden depth that keeps people talking about this game 14 years later. The nervous genius. Brelina Marion is the only wife on this list who will accidentally turn you into a horse. She's a Dunmer student at the College of Winterhold, and the moment you meet her, she's already on the defensive. Her opening line is essentially a preemptive shutdown. Before you even ask, yes, I have an ancestry steeped in magic, and no, I don't want to talk about it. Then, she immediately apologizes for snapping at you. That tension between pride and anxiety is her entire personality, and it's written better than most companion characters in games twice this budget. The ancestry she doesn't want to talk about is House Telvanni. If you know Elder Scrolls lore, that means something. House Telvanni is one of Morrowind's most powerful great houses, famous for isolationist wizard lords who live in giant mushroom towers and answer to nobody. They almost never leave Morrowind. Brelina is the first Telvanni to do so in a very long time, and she carries the weight of that. The family expectation is enormous. She came to Winterhold specifically to get away from it. I just want to learn. I don't want to think about what's expected of me. Her quest, Brelina's practice, is what makes the community love her. After Under Sarthal, she asks to test a spell on you. Nothing dangerous, she promises. Her first attempt turns your vision green. She's horrified. Confident she's fixed it, she tries again. You become a horse, then a cow, then a dog. Each transformation more ridiculous than the last, Brelina getting progressively more mortified. This really isn't turning out the way I'd hoped. She eventually fixes it, hands you a resist magic necklace, and asks you to never speak of it again. But here's where she separates from the previous 3 wives. Brelina is an actual follower with real combat utility. She casts armor buff spells before a fight, summons flame Atronax to tank for her, and fires destruction magic at range. She levels alongside you up to 30 and can be recruited into the Blades or serve as a steward for a Hearthfire home. She brings something to the table beyond a daily income and a cooked meal. She ranks at 5. The lore is rich, the quest is charming, the utility is real. She loses points only because the 4 women ahead of her are genuinely exceptional. The burden bearer. Lydia is not the best wife in Skyrim. She might be the most important character in it. She's assigned to you by Jarl Balgruuf after Dragon Rising, typically within the first 2 hours of the game. Your housecarl, sworn to your service. And within minutes of meeting her, you open her inventory to drop off some loot, and she delivers the line, I am sworn to carry your burdens. Flat, deadpan, dripping with sarcasm she technically isn't supposed to have. That one sentence became one of the most recognizable NPC quotes in gaming history, spawned the scumbag Lydia meme, and launched a Nexus mod specifically designed to stop her from saying it. The mod is called Lydia is Less Sarcastic. It has thousands of downloads. GameRant once asked why Skyrim has 66 followers, but you can only ever remember Lydia. The answer is that she arrived first. She's the tutorial for the entire follower system, introduced by name during a cutscene when every other housecarl just appears in a room. Most players never look for anyone else, but Lydia is genuinely good beyond the meme. She caps at level 50 with heavy armor, and block both maxed at 100, one-handed at 83. She's a pure melee tank who charges into everything and keeps enemies off you. The problem is she also charges into your arrows, walks into trap triggers, and falls off cliffs with alarming regularity. She is not essential. She can die. She does die. A Reddit thread asking players to share their Lydia death stories received over 3,600 responses. Players have found her corpse at their own wedding, crashing the ceremony and forcing a restart. The doorway blocking is its own chapter. She plants herself in doorframes and refuses to move regardless of how urgently you need through. The community solution is unrelenting force. This became a meme faster than Bethesda could patch anything. She was originally bugged and couldn't be married at all. Patch 1.5.24 fixed it. The Dragonborn DLC gave her new lines, including What Next? Carnivorous rabbits, while fighting Reeklings, which is frankly perfect. She's appeared in Elder Scrolls Legends and Elder Scrolls Castles. She's bigger than the game she came from. Lydia ranks at 4. Not because she's the most useful useful, not because her lore runs the deepest, but because she is the reason most people have any attachment to this system at all. Every wife ranked above her is standing on her shoulders. If you think one sarcastic housecarl is a lot to deal with, wait until you hear about the wife who brings an entire man with her, the indestructible Paladin. Mjol the Lioness is the best tank in Skyrim. She also comes with a man named Aaron who will live in your house forever. Her backstory earns every bit of the title. When she was a child, bandits burned her village to the ground and murdered her brother while she watched. She describes it once, plainly, with zero self-pity. Do you know, I actually saw one laugh as he ran my brother through. Her father was a hunter. Her mother taught her sword fighting. She grew up, became an adventurer, and spent years traveling all of Tamriel. Eventually, she walked into the Dwemer ruin Mazinchaleft and nearly got killed by a dwarven centurion. She lost her sword, a glass blade called Grimsever, and crawled out, barely alive. A man named Aaron found her dying on the road outside Riften, brought her into his home, and nursed her back to health. He told her about the corruption rotting the city from the inside, the Thieves' Guild, the Blackbriar family's stranglehold on every institution. And Mjol, recovered and furious, swore to protect Riften as a one-woman crusade against all of it. To marry her, you have to be at least level 14 and retrieve Grimsever from Mazinchaleft. Her reaction when you return it is one of the most genuinely warm moments in the game. She becomes a follower immediately and stays with you permanently. Here's what makes Mjol unique among every follower in Skyrim. She is flagged as permanently essential. She cannot die, not from enemies, not from traps, not from you accidentally hitting her with a shout. No other non-quest critical follower has this. At level 40, she sits at 580 health, with both heavy armor and two-handed maxed at 100. She is an indestructible wall that will outlast everything. But Aaron comes with her. He follows Mjol everywhere due to a follow package in his AI. When you marry her and move her to your home, he moves in too. He stands in your kitchen. He watches her sleep. He blocks doorways. He has 2 lines of dialogue. The community solution is almost always murder, executed carefully so Mjol doesn't witness it. The unofficial Skyrim patch removes his follow script entirely. Without it, he stays in Riften where he belongs. With it, he is your roommate indefinitely. There's also a shadow mark from the Thieves' Guild on Aaron's house in Riften. The mark means danger. The guild knows Mjol is a threat. They just never do anything about it, which is its own kind of commentary on how effective the guild actually is. Mjol ranks at 3. The lore is tragic and rich. The combat utility is unmatched, and the Aaron situation is the most uniquely Skyrim problem any wife on this list creates. The top 2 are in a different league entirely. The Huntress. Isla the Huntress is the wife most Skyrim players end up with, and she earned it in a way nobody else on this list comes close to matching. Her family line traces back to Hrodi Blackblade, one of Ysgramor's original 500 companions who sailed from Atmora to Tamriel in the Merethic era. Her grandmother was a companion. Her mother was a companion. Her mother died before seeing Ayla join, which is the detail that quietly drives everything about her. Ma didn't live long enough to see me join, but I fight to honor her and all my shield sisters through time. She grew up in the wilds with her father, who raised her as a hunter. That's where the archery comes from. That's where everything comes from. She's one of 5 members of the Circle, the companion's secret inner sanctum. All 5 are werewolves. What separates Ayla from every other Circle member is that she is the only one who refuses to cure her lycanthropy, ever. Kodlak wants to be free of it. Vilkas tolerates it. Ayla sees it as a gift from her scene, and treats anyone who disagrees as simply wrong. Her relationship with fellow Circle member Skjor is implied to be romantic, the 2 of them hunting together as wolves on the plains outside Whiterun at night. His death at the Silverhand's hands is the moment her character shifts from confident to dangerous. You first see her at Pelagia Farm just outside Whiterun, fighting a giant alongside Farkas and Rhea. It's one of the earliest memorable moments in the game. If you help, she acknowledges you. If you stand there watching, she has 0 patience. Ha! Another milk drinker crying about his effort. Glory only awaits those who triumph. To marry her, you have to complete the entire companion's questline through Glory of the Dead. Every mission, no shortcuts. That requirement is exactly why she ranks this high. She is the only wife on this list who actively makes you work for her through a full, meaningful story. You don't bring her a tusk. You don't retrieve a sword. You fight alongside her, watch her grieve Skjor, journey into Ysgramor's tomb, and earn her respect over the course of a complete questline. The practical benefits match the lore. She caps at level 50 with archery near 100 and sneak at 97, the highest of any non-DLC follower in the game. She offers expert archery training up to level 75 after marriage, and because she's your follower, you can pay for training and take the gold straight back from her inventory. Essentially free skill gains for as long as you want. She also tolerates every crime without leaving your service, and in Dawnguard she can restore your lycanthropy one additional time if you cured it. The community has loved her since 2011 and never stopped. She appears at the top of nearly every best wives ranking ever written. She is the standard every other follower wife gets measured against, but she's not number one. The one you can't have. Serana is the best companion Bethesda has ever written. She is also in vanilla Skyrim completely impossible to marry, and the community has spent 14 years trying to fix that. She's a pure-blood vampire roughly 4,000 to 5,000 years old, daughter of Lord Harkon, leader of the Volkihar clan. Her title is Daughter of Cold Harbor, which means she became a vampire through a ritual involving Molag Bal, the Daedric prince of domination. The lore around what that ritual actually involves is dark enough that Serana describes it only as unpleasant and emotionally scarring, and refuses to say anything more. She is so ancient she predates the Cyrodiilic Empire. When she wakes up and learns that Cyrodiil is now the seat of an empire, she's genuinely confused. She missed thousands of years of history sealed in a sarcophagus inside Dim Hollow Crypt. Her mother put her there, without her consent, to protect her from a prophecy that required the sacrifice of a daughter of Cold Harbor to blot out the sun. Her father wanted to use her. Her mother hid her away without asking. Both parents treated her as a piece in their war, and her arc through the Dawnguard questline is the gradual realization of exactly that. She ends it by helping you kill her own father. That's the emotional weight Serana is carrying across every conversation she has with the Dragonborn. She is voiced by Laura Bailey, who gives a performance that makes every other follower in the game sound like they're reading off a cue card. The creation kit reveals she has 2 complete sets of dialogue, warmer versions that only trigger as her disposition rises. The progression from guarded and wary to genuinely warm is earned over dozens of hours, and it feels real. If you propose to her with the Amulet of Mara, she refuses. Even walking near a temple scares me. This doesn't change if you cure her vampirism. She is simply not in the marriage faction, and Bethesda never changed it. The community's response was immediate and has never stopped. The mod Marry Me Serana has over 16,000 endorsements on Nexus Mods. Serana Dialogue add-on adds over 7,000 new voiced lines, a full romance questline with actual dates, gift-giving, and custom commentary across the entire game. It was covered by Forbes magazine. A mod for a 13-year-old game got a Forbes write-up because people wanted to marry this character that badly. Her combat utility matches her lore depth. She levels to 50 with the highest health pool of any follower, complete frost and disease immunity, and a spell kit that scales from basic Ice Spike all the way to Chain Lightning and Ice Storm at max level. She will also, when no better option exists, reanimate dead chickens to fight alongside her. Glowing purple zombie chickens charging a giant is the most Serana experience possible, and it is perfect. She ranks at number 1 not just because of what she is in the game, but because of what she represents outside it. Bethesda built a companion so compelling that the entire community refused to accept she wasn't marriageable, built the tools to fix it themselves, and kept adding to those tools for over a decade. That's not a ranking, that's a verdict. Skyrim has over 60 marriage candidates, and most of them are completely forgotten the second you put a ring on their finger. From warriors who lose all personality the moment they move in, to shopkeepers who act like they've never met you, to followers whose entire existence becomes standing next to a cooking pot. Today, I'm breaking down what actually happened to every wife in Skyrim, starting with the one everyone married first, Lydia. Lydia is the most married character in Skyrim. She's also the one with the least to say about it. And that's not an exaggeration. Based on Steam achievement data, a staggering number of players married Lydia before they even understood what marriage in Skyrim actually meant. And honestly, it makes perfect sense. She shows up right after Bleak Falls Barrow, the very first real quest in the game. You barely know how the shout system works, and suddenly there's a woman sworn to carry your burdens standing in your living room. Throw on an Amulet of Mara, and congratulations, you're hitched. But here's the thing, once you marry Lydia, nothing changes. Zero unique dialogue, zero narrative arc, zero acknowledgement that she went from being your assigned bodyguard to your wife. She wears whatever armor you hand her, follows you into caves, and occasionally blocks doorways. That's the entire marriage, and it gets quietly uncomfortable when you think about it. Lydia is your housecarl. She's bound to serve you by the Jarl's decree. She didn't choose to follow you. She was assigned. So when you marry her, the question becomes whether she ever actually had a say in any of this. Some fans point to her dialogue during A Blade in the Dark as proof that there's real emotional depth hiding under the surface. A flicker of something personal, but the game never develops it. It's a tease with no payoff, which might be the most Lydia thing possible impossible. She's beloved by millions for doing absolutely nothing, but at least Lydia got to be famous for her emptiness, unlike the next wife, who got completely overshadowed, despite having way more going on. Jada Stonearm. If Lydia is the wife everyone chose but nobody remembers, and Jada Stonearm is the wife nobody chose at all. And honestly, it's hard to blame them. Njada is a Nord warrior in the Companions who specializes in block, enough to serve as an expert trainer up to level 75. She's got secondary skills in one-handed and speech. On paper, that sounds decent. But Lydia hits one-handed and block of 100 at her level cap. Njada isn't a copy-paste warrior. She's a downgrade with a worse attitude. But here's the thing. At least Lydia has the benefit of being your first housecarl. You meet her early. She follows you into danger. She carries your burdens. There's a shared history there, even if it's shallow. Njada has less than that. Sure, you have to finish the entire Companion's questline before she'll even consider marrying you, but that's not her quest. That's the Companion's quest. You do all that work, walk up to her in Jorvaskr, throw on an amulet of Mara, and she just says yes. That's it. That's the entire love story. All that effort for zero personal payoff. She has no unique dialogue worth mentioning. No backstory that unfolds over time. No moment where you think, oh, there's actually something interesting going on with this character. She exists in the Companion's Hall, she swings a sword, and she's technically available for marriage. That's her entire resume. Post-marriage, it gets even worse. No new lines, no acknowledgement that anything has changed. She delivers the same generic spouse dialogue that every single wife in the game shares. You could replace her with a mannequin wearing a companion's outfit and the experience would be functionally identical. Players have debated for years whether Njada was a placeholder character that accidentally shipped with the final game, or a planned NPC whose questline got cut and never restored. Either way, the result is the same. She is the least chosen wife in Skyrim, and the mystery isn't why nobody picks her. The mystery is why she's an option at all. But if you think being forgettable is the worst thing that can happen to a Skyrim wife, wait until you meet one whose entire romance is built on a lie. Isolde. Isolde had a future, a real one. Not a stand behind a market stall and repeat the same line forever future, but an actual career trajectory built into the game's world. She was embedded in the Khajiit caravan network, learning the trade routes, building relationships with the traveling merchants that most of Skyrim treats like second-class citizens. She actively asks you to bring her a mammoth tusk so she can trade with the caravans and build her business. She was going somewhere, and you can see it in how she lives. Isolde doesn't own a shop. She doesn't have a stall. She's out in the Whiterun marketplace every single day, hustling, networking, learning the craft from the ground level. Her whole identity is built around ambition, around becoming a real merchant, around carving out a place for herself in a city that already has established traders. If Belethor dies, she's actually positioned to take over his entire general goods store. That's how deep her trajectory goes. But then you hand her an amulet of Mara, and all of that just disappears. The moment you marry Isolde, she becomes a homeowner. She stops trading. She stops hustling. She stops being the person the game spent all that time establishing her as. There's no dialogue where she talks about missing the marketplace. No moment where she mentions the caravans. No conversation about whether this is what she actually wanted. She just becomes another spouse standing in your living room asking if you'd like a home-cooked meal. Here's the thing. The game even hints at deeper layers to her story. A Sanguine Rose quest ties her to a Hagraven wedding, suggesting she's involved in dealings far shadier than simple commerce. That's not a random detail. That's a character with hidden depths, a woman whose ambitions and secrets extend way beyond what she shows on the surface, and the game just lets all of that evaporate without a single line of acknowledgement. Nobody asks Isolde if she wanted to stop being Isolde, but at least Isolde had a choice in the matter. The next wife on this list didn't even get that luxury. Ayla the Huntress. Ayla the Huntress is, on paper, the perfect wife. She's a member of the Circle, the elite inner group of the Companions. She has 100 archery skill, the highest in the entire faction, and she doesn't just hand you a ring after fetching some mammoth tusks. You have to push deep into the Companion's questline, at least through Blood's Honor, before she's even available. That means this is one of the only marriages in Skyrim that actually feels earned. And honestly, she's incredible. She fights beside you, she trains you, she hunts with you. She's not sitting in Breezeholm staring at a wall. She's out there putting arrows through bandit skulls at 200 yards. But here's where it gets tragic, and nobody talks about this. Ayla is a werewolf. werewolf. Not temporarily, not reluctantly, permanently. The base game confirms it outright during the Glory of the Dead quest. When you get the option to cure your lycanthropy, Ayla flat out refuses. She has zero interest in being cured. She loves being a werewolf. She embraces it completely. The Dawnguard DLC doubles down on this by letting her re-grant you lycanthropy if you cure yourself. That's how committed she is. And in Elder Scrolls lore, lycanthropy doesn't just give you claws and a bad temper, it binds your soul to Hircine's hunting grounds, forever. When a werewolf dies, they don't go to Sovngarde. They go to Hircine's realm to hunt for eternity. So let that sink in. You marry Ayla, you build a home together, you adopt kids, you grow old together, you both die, and then you're separated forever. Your soul goes to Sovngarde, or wherever the Dragonborn ends up. Hers goes to Hircine. You spend eternity apart, in completely different planes of oblivion. The game never acknowledges this. Not once. No dialogue, no quest, no journal entry. You just get married and the game says, "Congratulations," while quietly ignoring the fact that you've created one of the most heartbreaking love stories in RPG history. She's the strongest wife in Skyrim, and your afterlife together was never even on the table. But at least Ayla is honest about who she is. The next wife on this list? She's been hiding something from everyone in Riverwood. Grelka. Most players walk right past Grelka without a second thought. She's a vendor in Riften, selling light armor and training, and she's one of the easiest wives to get in the entire game. No quests, no favors. Just slap on an amulet of Mara and she's ready to go. Simple, forgettable, move on. But Grelka is hiding one of the darkest backstories Bethesda ever buried in a character. Here's the thing. Through Radiant quest content, Grelka is connected to the worship of Dibella, and on the surface, that sounds harmless. Dibella is the goddess of beauty and love. Temples dedicated to her exist across Skyrim, but the Temple of Dibella has a shadowed side that the game only hints at, one tied to exploitation, indoctrination, and practices that go way beyond simple worship. Grelka's involvement with this cult points to a history of trafficking and abuse that the game never directly spells out, but absolutely implies through her dialogue and behavior, and that's the part that gets uncomfortable. Listen to how Grelka talks. She references her past with a flatness that doesn't match the weight of what she's describing. There's no emotion behind it, no anger, no sadness, just a kind of rehearsed detachment, like someone who stopped processing trauma a long time ago. Fans picked up on this immediately, reading it as a deliberate character detail that the writers included but consciously chose not to develop further. The game gives you zero acknowledgement of any of this after marriage. No recovery arc, no healing dialogue, no moment where she opens up or finds peace. She goes from a woman with an implied history of exploitation to your wife who sells armor and says generic spouse lines. That's it. The narrative bridge between those two realities simply doesn't exist. And the worst part? The overwhelming majority of players who marry Grelka have absolutely no idea about any of this. They picked her because she was convenient, because she required nothing. They never looked deeper, and the game made sure they never had to. But Grelka's hidden darkness is still relatively contained. The next wife on this list took her trauma and turned it into something far more active and far more violent. Majol the Lioness. Most marriage candidates in Skyrim hand you a grocery list and call it a quest. Mjol the Lioness hands you an entire identity crisis. Here's the thing. Mjol isn't just another warrior you slap an amulet of Mara on and call it a day. She's one of the highest level marriage candidates in the entire game, with her two-handed skill scaling all the way up to 175 block. She arrives with something almost nobody else on this list has. A real backstory. Not a few throwaway lines about growing up on a farm. An actual narrative arc involving corruption, loss, and the slow erosion of who she used to be. Her personal quest requires you to descend into Mazinchalev, a Dwemer ruin, and retrieve her lost sword, Grimsever. That sword isn't just a weapon. It's the last piece of the adventurer she was, before everything fell apart. Retrieving it is what finally breaks the hold that despair had on her sense of self. It's a genuine redemption arc, and marrying Mjol afterward feels like a psychological milestone rather than a transaction. She reclaimed her agency. She chose you. That's rare in this game, but here's where it gets complicated. Aaron, a young Imperial from Riften who follows Mjol everywhere. Before marriage, after marriage, into your house, into your bedroom, practically. His AI behaves less like a companion and more like a surveillance system. He has no quest. He has no clear purpose. He just watches. And the game never tells you what he actually is. Some players see a devoted protector who saved Mjol when she was at her most vulnerable and simply never stopped guarding her. Others see something darker, a controlling presence who attached himself to a broken woman and never let go. The evidence supports both readings equally, and Bethesda clearly designed it that way, which raises the real question nobody wants to sit with. When you marry Mjol, are you completing her arc of reclaimed independence, or are you just replacing one dependency with another? She went from near death outside a Dwemer ruin to Aaron's constant shadow to your homestead. At what point did she actually choose freely? The game pointedly refuses to answer, and that refusal is what makes Mjol the most emotionally complex marriage in Skyrim. She's the only wife where the happy ending genuinely makes you think. But if Mjol's story made you uncomfortable, the next one is going to make your skin crawl for entirely different reasons. Camilla Valerius. Most players married Camilla Valerius within their first 10 hours of Skyrim. She's right there in Riverwood, the first real town you visit. She's pretty, she's friendly, and she gives you one of the earliest quests in the entire game. The Golden Claw retrieval makes her feel like a natural love interest. You help her shop, you return the artifact, you throw on an amulet of Mara, and you've got yourself a wife before you even reach High Hrothgar. Simple, right? Harmless, right? Here's where it gets complicated. Before you even propose, Camilla is already the center of a love triangle. Both Feindal and Sven are actively competing for her attention, sending fake letters, sabotaging each other, turning a quiet river town into a soap opera. That alone gives her more pre-marriage narrative presence than 90% of the other candidates on this list. She actually feels like a person with a life happening around her, but that life might be darker than anyone realized. Camilla has connections to Delphine's intelligence network operating out of Riverwood. Delphine, the Blades agent hiding as an innkeeper literally across the street, runs one of the most sophisticated spy operations in Skyrim. And Camilla, positioned perfectly in the town's only general store, seeing every traveler, hearing every rumor, has indirect ties to information channels that feed into both Thieves Guild and Dark Brotherhood operations. The kind of information that eventually reaches Thalmor ears. Let me be clear, the game never sits you down and says your wife is a spy. There's no quest that confirms it, no dialogue that reveals it. And that's almost worse than a clear answer. You can piece together enough breadcrumbs across multiple quest lines to suspect something is deeply wrong, but Bethesda never lets you confront it. After marriage, Camilla does exactly nothing different. She runs the shop. She gives you merchant profits. She says the same generic spouse lines every other wife says. Zero acknowledgement of her intelligence connections. Zero resolution. You could be the Dragonborn, the harbinger of the companions, the savior of the entire world, and your wife might be quietly passing information to the people trying to destroy everything you built. Every marriage to Camilla Valerius is potentially a diplomatic incident that the game refuses to acknowledge. You didn't marry a shopkeeper? You might have married an operative, but at least Camilla's secrets are subtle. The next wife on this list has a problem that follows her home every single day. Tari. If Camilla is a spy you stumble into, Tari is a spy you walk directly toward with your eyes wide open. She runs the Radiant Raiment in Solitude, selling fine clothes and backhanded compliments to anyone who walks through the door. 50 bartering, 50 speechcraft, a perfectly respectable merchant with a perfectly respectable skill set. But here's the thing, she's an Altmer, operating in Solitude, the single most Thalmor-saturated city in all of Skyrim. Let that sink in for a second. Solitude isn't just the imperial capital of the province. It's the political nerve center of Thalmor operations. Their embassy is right there. Their agents walk the streets openly. Their influence touches every major decision that passes through the Blue Palace. And sitting comfortably in the middle of all of it is Tari, a high elf merchant who just happens to have the exact skill set you'd want in an intelligence operative. Speechcraft and bartering, persuasion and negotiation, the tools of someone whose real job is extracting information, not selling dresses. To marry her, you complete the fit for a Jarl quest. You literally model an outfit for the Jarl's court. That's it. That's the barrier to entry. A fashion errand. It's so mundane it almost feels like a cover story in itself. Now, the game never confirms Tari is Thalmor. Zero explicit dialogue. No confession, no handler, no dead drop in the back room. But the contextual evidence is heavy. The In My Time of Need questline proves the Thalmor use civilian covers to track targets across Skyrim. Tari's position in Solitude gives her direct access to Imperial military movements, political gossip, and trade intelligence. She's not hiding in some backwater village. She's embedded in the most strategically valuable city on the map. But here's where it gets complicated. There's another reading entirely. Some fans argue Tari isn't working for the Thalmor. She's hiding from them. That her shop in Solitude is the ultimate camouflage. An Altmer living openly in Thalmor territory, so she never looks like she's running. The best place to disappear is sometimes right under the nose of the people looking for you, and the game gives you absolutely nothing to settle the debate. Post-marriage, Tari runs her shop, pays you a daily stipend, and delivers the same generic spouse lines as everyone else. No political intrigue, no Thalmor confrontation, no revelation. You either married a committed enemy operative and neutralized her through domesticity, or you married a terrified refugee and gave her the one thing she never had: safety. You will genuinely never know which one it is. And unlike Camilla's ambiguity, the stakes here aren't personal, they're geopolitical. The Thalmor are an active existential threat to Skyrim, and your wife might be reporting to them every single night after you fall asleep, but at least Tari's mystery has two possible happy endings. The next wife on this list doesn't even get one: Muri. Muri might be the quietest tragedy in all of Skyrim. Not the bloodiest, not the most dramatic, but the one that sits with you longest after you turn the game off. She's a Breton alchemist working at the Hag's Cure in Markarth, and on the surface, she looks like any other shopkeeper. But here's the thing, you can't marry her by just walking up with an amulet of Mara. She's one of the few wives in the entire game whose availability is locked behind a specific quest line, and that quest line is genuinely dark. Before the player ever meets her, Muri's life has already fallen apart. She was close with the Shattershield clan in Windhelm, a prominent family she considered her own. Then a man named Alain Dufont entered her life. He used her, manipulated her trust, her connections, and ultimately robbed the Shattershield's blind. And when the dust settled, the family didn't blame Alain, they blamed Muri. They cast her out of Windhelm entirely. So she lost everything: her home, her surrogate family, her sense of self, all because someone exploited her, and she got punished for it. And the game doesn't hide what this did to her. Muri carries explicit pain in her dialogue throughout the entire game. Lines that fans and researchers have flagged as deeply troubled, bordering on despairing. This isn't subtext. This isn't a fan theory. The words are right there in her script, before the player even initiates conversation. She is one of the only characters in Skyrim whose emotional devastation is front and center from the moment you meet her. Now here's where it gets genuinely dark. Her quest, Morning Never Comes, is a Dark Brotherhood contract. She wants Alain Dufont dead. That's the required target. But she also has an optional one: Nilsine Shattershield, the daughter of the family that threw her away. You'd assume skipping the optional kill is the merciful choice, but the game punishes you for mercy. Muri only becomes available for marriage if you kill both targets. Leave Nilsine alive, and Muri won't marry you. The game literally locks companionship behind maximum bloodshed. Think about that. The only way to build a life with this woman is to murder someone she has a personal grudge against, on top of the man who destroyed her life. And after the wedding, nothing. Zero acknowledgement of everything she went through. No recovery dialogue, no healing arc, no mention of Alain, the Shattershields, or the grief that defined her entire existence 5 minutes ago. She just becomes another merchant wife. She works, she pays you, she greets you when you walk through the door. Identical to every other spouse in the game. Fans have debated this for years. Is marrying Muri an act of compassion, giving a broken person companionship and stability? Or is it exploitation, attaching yourself to someone vulnerable because the game lets you, with zero consequences and zero responsibility? The honest answer is the game doesn't care enough to make it either one. It just hands you a deeply troubled person, and then completely forgets about her. That's not horror in the traditional sense. No monsters, no jump scares. It's the quiet kind. The kind where you realize the system that built her pain was more detailed than the system meant to address it. But if Muri's story is unsettling because the game forgot about her, the next wife is disturbing because the game remembered every single detail. Iola. Everything before this was a warm-up. Every wife on this list has quirks, red flags, or tragic backstories. Some are bland, some are broken, some are genuinely unsettling. But none of them require you to eat a person before they'll agree to marry you. Iola does. She's a Breton mage first encountered in the Hall of the Dead in Markarth, lurking in one of the most unsettling locations you can stumble into early in the game. You walk in expecting crypts and cobwebs. Instead, you find her, and she's not some misunderstood outcast waiting to be saved. She's a practicing cannibal and devoted follower of Namira, the Daedric prince of darkness, decay, and everything that makes your skin crawl. She eventually leads you to the shrine of Namira, hidden inside Reachcliff Cave, where things get significantly worse. The quest to unlock her as a marriage candidate is called the Taste of Death, and that's not metaphorical. The game literally requires you to participate in a cannibalism ritual alongside her. You sit down at a table, you eat human flesh, and then, only then, does Iola become available as a spouse. Her primary skills are destruction and sneak, both pushing into the high 70s. With solid alteration on top of that, she's a capable mage who can hold her own in a fight, but that competence becomes a quietly horrifying detail when you remember what she does with corpses. Because Iola isn't just a cannibal. She's the only marriage candidate in Skyrim with necrophilia explicitly coded into her character. Her dialogue references corpse desecration in a completely matter-of-fact tone, like she's telling you about her favorite hobby. The game treats it as a personality quirk rather than a disqualifier. But here's where it gets truly bizarre. After marriage, nothing changes. She has explicit dialogue confirming she continues her Daedric worship and ritual practices without alteration. There's no reformation arc, no moment of self-reflection, no scene where she acknowledges any conflict between her devotion to Namira and her relationship with you. She's the same person she was before the wedding. She just lives in your house now. Let that sink in. You shared a meal with a cannibal necrophiliac, put on an amulet of Mara, and now she's your wife. And the game is completely fine with that. No consequences, no reputation hit, no dialogue from anyone acknowledging what just happened. She is the only marriage option in any mainstream RPG where the prerequisite for the relationship is committing acts of cannibalism, and the only one where the marriage itself offers zero redemption, zero change, and zero narrative consequence. Fans debate whether her existence as a marriage option is dark comedy, an oversight, or a deliberate statement about the moral limits the game is willing to enforce. The answer, given that she has full marriage dialogue and fully functional mechanics, appears to be that there are no limits. Iola is the most obscure, most extreme, and most deliberately unsettling marriage in Skyrim. She doesn't represent a failure of Skyrim's morality system. She represents the moment the game decided not to have one. Skyrim has over 60 marriage candidates, but the husbands? Nobody ranks them. Nobody talks about which ones are actually worth marrying, and which ones are a complete waste of an amulet of Mara. So today, I'm breaking down and ranking every single husband in Skyrim, from the absolute worst to the best of the best, starting with a man who has literally nothing to offer. And I mean nothing. Angranor once honored. We're kicking off this tier list in D tier, and we're starting with a literal beggar. Angranor once honored is a Nord living on the frozen streets of Windhelm with zero gold, zero home, and zero prospects. He's a former Stormcloak soldier who fought in the Civil War, got chewed up by it, and ended up sleeping on the pavement. And you can marry this man. Here's the thing, there is zero barrier to entry. No quest, no task, no reputation check. You just walk up to him wearing the amulet of Mara and propose. That's it. He says yes immediately, because of course he does. Mechanically, Angranor is the weakest husband in the entire game. No trainer skills, no notable combat stats, no unique abilities whatsoever. He brings absolutely nothing to the table except gratitude and a sad backstory. But here's where it gets interesting. Players who marry Angranor aren't doing it for the stats. They're doing it because it feels like the right thing to do. In a game full of transactional relationships where you marry someone because they can train you in heavy armor or sell you discount potions, marrying Angranor feels like an actual act of kindness. You're giving a forgotten war veteran a second chance at life. It's sweet, it's genuinely emotional, and statistically, it's a complete disaster. That's D tier in a nutshell. But if you think starting with a beggar is rough, wait until you meet the town drunk, Kaznak. Most guys ask you out for coffee. Maybe dinner if they're feeling bold. Kaznak requires you to punch him in the face first, and honestly, that should tell you everything you need to know about this relationship. Kaznak is a Breton who spends most of his time drinking at the Silver Blood Inn in Markarth, but he actually lives in the Warrens. Yeah, the poorest, most depressing housing in the entire city. This man's entire existence revolves around being hammered in a tavern he can't even afford to stay at. And Bethesda thought, yeah, that's husband material. Here's the thing, to even unlock the option of marrying this guy, you have to beat him in a brawl. No fetch quests, no heartfelt conversations, no proving yourself through heroic deeds. You walk up, throw fists, win, and suddenly he's interested. It's the most unhinged courtship mechanic in the entire game, and it's genuinely hilarious the first time you experience it. But here's where the fun stops. Once you actually marry Kaznak, you quickly realize that his drunk character voice type is not a quirky bonus. It's his entire personality. Every line of dialogue sounds like he's 3 ales deep, because he is. The novelty wears off faster than you'd expect. What seemed charming in a tavern becomes exhausting in your living room. Combat-wise, he caps at level 30 with mediocre melee stats. Fine if you marry him early, completely irrelevant by late game. He's not protecting you from anything serious once the difficulty scales past him. The community consensus on Koznak is pretty much unanimous. The Brawl introduction is one of the most memorable courtship moments in Skyrim. Players genuinely love telling that story. But actually living with him? That's a different conversation entirely. He's the kind of husband who's a great first date and a terrible long-term commitment. But if you think a drunk brawler is a rough pick, wait until we meet a husband whose entire sales pitch is that he owns a used goods store. Revan Sadri. Most husbands in Skyrim ask you to punch someone, fetch an item, or hand over a gold coin. Revan Sadri asks you to commit a crime, and not a cool crime. A weird, premeditated, evidence-planting crime that would hold up in an actual courtroom. Here's the deal. Revan runs Sadri's used wares in Windhelm's Grey Quarter, and he's got a problem. A stolen gold ring has ended up in his inventory, and if anyone finds out, his business is done. So to unlock him as a marriage candidate, you need to complete a quest called That Was Always There, which requires you to take that ring and plant it inside an innocent woman's house to frame her for the theft. Let me say that again. You commit conspiracy and evidence tampering to get a date. This is not a metaphor. This is not subtext. This is the literal quest objective. But here's where it gets interesting. Once you get past the light criminal activity, Revan is actually one of the more mechanically useful husbands in the lower tiers. He's an adept level speech trainer, meaning he can train you up to level 50 in speech. That's genuinely valuable for builds that rely on bartering, persuasion, or intimidation. On top of that, he opens a shop from your home after marriage, generating passive income like a proper small business owner. His personality matches the merchant lifestyle. He's appreciative, but professional. No dramatic love confessions, no poetic declarations, just a guy who's grateful you helped him, and treats the marriage like a solid partnership. Some players find that refreshingly honest. Others find it about as romantic as a tax return. The community stays split on Revan. Half the fan base loves the moral complexity of a courtship built on conspiracy. The other half can't get past the fact that your entire relationship is founded on framing an innocent person. Either way, his trainer utility and shop income put him a clear step above the D-tier options. But if you think Revan's courtship was morally questionable, wait until you meet a husband whose entire existence is defined by being an outsider, scouts many marshes. Nobody talks about this guy. And honestly, that's a crime, because Scout's Many Marshes might be the most underrated husband in the entire game. He's an Argonian dock worker stationed outside the walls of Windhelm. Not inside, outside, because Windhelm's Nord population won't let Argonians through the gates. He spends his days hauling cargo in the cold, barred from the city he works for, and somehow still maintains a level of quiet dignity that most Skyrim NPCs couldn't dream of. Here's the thing, he's one of only 2 Argonian marriage options in the entire base game, him and Dirkethis. That's it. If you want an Argonian husband specifically, your options begin and end with these 2. For players building Argonian characters or anyone wanting a reptilian partner to match their Histborn Dragonborn, Scout's Many Marshes isn't just a viable pick. He's practically the only alternative. And the courtship? Refreshingly simple. Complete a basic miscellaneous task for him. No crime, no conspiracy, no punching anyone in a bar. Just straightforward good faith work. It's almost suspiciously wholesome compared to some of the other courtship requirements on this list. But here's where he actually earns his spot. Scout's Many Marshes is an adept level light armor trainer, capable of training you up to level 50. For stealth builds, archer builds, or anyone running light armor as their primary defense, that's genuinely valuable utility baked directly into your spouse. You're getting free training sessions every time you walk through your front door. As a follower, his level cap sits at 50 with solid mid-range combat performance. He's not going to carry you through legendary difficulty, but equip him with decent light armor, and he'll hold his own without embarrassing himself. Competent, reliable, exactly what you'd expect from a guy who's spent his whole life working harder than everyone around him for half the recognition. The community quietly loves him. He's never topping anyone's tier list, but players who choose him consistently walk away satisfied. And his outsider status in Windhelm gives him real narrative weight if you engage with the city's racial tension storylines. But if you think Scout's Many Marshes has it rough as an Argonian, wait until until you meet the other one on this list, because Dirkethus has problems that make dock work look like a vacation. Dirkethus. Dirkethus is the only Argonian follower in the entire base game. That sounds like it should be a selling point. It's not. Before you can even talk to this guy about following you, you have to rescue him from Darkwater Pass, a Falmer dungeon where he's being held captive. So the very first thing the game tells you about your potential companion is that he got kidnapped by blind cave monsters and couldn't get out on his own. Not exactly the strongest first impression. But here's the thing. The narrative setup implies fragility, and the mechanics confirm it. Dirkethus has a level cap of only 30. That's significantly lower than most comparable followers. At that cap, he's sitting at roughly 340 health points, which is approximately half of what similar level followers carry. Half. You could sneeze on this man in a late game dungeon and he'd be on the floor. His combat focus is archery with a skill of 78, which makes him average at range and genuinely poor in melee. He doesn't excel at either role. He's not a sniper, he's not a tank, he's just sort of there, occasionally firing arrows in the general direction of danger. Now, he does have one unique advantage. Dirkethus is flagged as an essential NPC, meaning he literally cannot die. Sounds great on paper, but in practice, that essential tag actually prevents certain stat-fixing exploits that players use on other followers to boost their effectiveness. So the one thing that should make him useful actually locks you out of making him better. Players who invest the effort in rescuing him consistently report the same thing: disappointment. The community recommends Dirkethus almost exclusively for roleplay purposes, specifically for players who want an Argonian companion but don't want to rely on mods. And that's the real problem. He's the only Argonian follower option in vanilla Skyrim, so if you want a reptilian battle buddy, you're stuck with a guy whose level cap and health scaling make him a liability in any serious fight. No alternatives, no competition, just Dirkethus and his middling archery. The game's only Argonian follower is also one of its weakest. That's not a tragedy, but it is genuinely disappointing. Onmund. Welcome to B tier, where the husbands actually start having a personality, and Onmund is the perfect introduction to this tier because he's the definition of genuinely likable guy who doesn't blow you away. Onmund is a Nord apprentice mage studying at the College of Winterhold, which already makes him interesting. A Nord, choosing magic. In a culture that basically treats mages like they have a contagious disease, his entire family disowned his life choices, and that tension is the core of everything that makes Onmund worth talking about. His personal quest, Onmund's request, involves retrieving a family amulet he traded to Enthyr, a shady dealer operating inside the college. And the reason he sold it? Shame. He was so conflicted about choosing magic over his family's warrior traditions that he gave away the one thing connecting him to them. That's a genuinely touching character beat for a game that usually hands you fetch quests with zero emotional weight. Here, the fetch quest actually means something, and that quest is all you need to unlock marriage. No major faction progression, no completing the entire college quest line. Just help the guy get his heirloom back, slap on an amulet of Mara, and you're done. He's one of the most accessible college husbands in the game, but here's where the enthusiasm has to cool down a bit. Mechanically, Onmund is a mage follower capped at level 30, the lowest cap of any college student follower, and he specializes in frost and shock destruction spells. He's competent. He'll throw lightning at things and they'll die, but he offers no master training, no unique abilities, no distinctive combat dialogue that makes you think, wow, I need this guy in my party. He's reliable elemental damage and nothing more. The community calls him the safe college pick, and that's exactly right. He's thematically perfect for mage characters. His backstory adds real emotional dimension, and he'll never let you down. He'll also never surprise you. Onmund is the kind of guy you genuinely enjoy having dinner with, but wouldn't necessarily trust to hold his own in a Dwemer ruin when things get ugly. But if you think safe and emotionally resonant is the ceiling for college mages, wait until you meet the husband who turned arrogance into an art form. Balimund. Balimund is the husband you marry when you're tired of adventurers and just want a man with a stable career. He's a Nord blacksmith running the Scorched Hammer in Riften, and his entire appeal can be summed up in 5 words. This man has a job. And honestly, that's more than most husbands in Skyrim can say. To marry Balimund, you need to complete Stoking the Flames, which involves bringing him fire salts so he can keep his forge running. Alternatively, you can invest in his shop through the Investor perk. Both paths are merchant-class interactions. No dragon slaying, no dungeon crawling. You're basically proving you're a reliable business partner, and somehow that's romantic enough to trigger a marriage proposal. Here's the thing, Balamund is not a fighter. His combat ability is completely average, and if you're bringing him into battle expecting fireworks, you're going to be disappointed. He swings a weapon the same way every other generic follower does. Nothing special, nothing memorable. He is not the reason you marry this man. The reason you marry this man is the Forge. After marriage, Balamund operates a smithing business from your home. That means improved material access, convenient crafting proximity, and a spouse who actually contributes to your gameplay loop in a tangible way. For players running crafting-heavy builds or settlement-focused playthroughs, this is genuinely valuable. You come home from clearing a dungeon, dump your loot, and your husband is right there ready to help you turn it into something useful. But community reception is completely split down the middle. Players who focus on economy, crafting, or roleplay find real satisfaction in Balamund. He fits their playstyle perfectly. Combat optimizers, though, they look at his stats, shrug, and move on to someone who can actually hold their own in a fight. Balamund is a niche pick, but for the right player, he's exactly what they need. And speaking of husbands who actually know how to swing a weapon, let's talk about someone with significantly more muscle. RGIS, the Bulwark. Now we're crossing into upper B-tier territory, and we're starting with a guy who is genuinely better than most players realize. Argus the Bulwark is the housecarl assigned to you when you become Thane of Markarth. That's it. That's the courtship. The Jarl signs a piece of paper, and suddenly you have a live-in bodyguard who's also eligible for marriage. It's the least romantic origin story in the entire game. Your relationship literally begins with a political appointment, but here's the thing. Ignore how you get him, and look at what you actually get. At level 50, Argus has 671 health points. That is the highest health pool of any housecarl in the game. Not close to the highest. The highest. His heavy armor skill sits at 100. His one-handed skill sits at 100. The man is a walking fortress with a sword. The name The Bulwark isn't just flavor text, it's a stat sheet summary. He outperforms Gregor, he outperforms Calder, he outperforms every single housecarl husband option in raw mechanical terms. And it's not even particularly close. So why does nobody talk about him? Because housecarls feel like default options. They're assigned to you. You don't choose them the way you choose to recruit Vilcus or hire Mercurio. There's no quest, no dramatic rescue, no brawl in a tavern. The game just hands him to you like furniture that came with the house. And because of that, players mentally categorize him as generic, boring, a placeholder, which is a mistake. Personality-wise, Argus is exactly what you'd expect from a career soldier. Direct, utilitarian, not deep, not quirky, but dependable in a way that some players find genuinely appealing. He takes his duties seriously, whether that means guarding your home or following you into a Dwemer ruin. And his dual role as housecarl and spouse creates natural narrative coherence for anyone invested in property ownership or Thane roleplay. He's your appointed protector who became your partner. That actually tracks. Community consensus puts Argus as the go-to pick for players who want a warrior husband without grinding through an entire faction questline. He's the actually kind of great discovery of the mid-tier, and the 671 health is doing more work than most players ever bother to find out. But if you think raw stats are impressive, wait until you meet someone whose combat utility goes way beyond just being hard to kill. Mercurio, welcome to A-tier, where husbands actually earn their spot. And Mercurio doesn't just earn it, he charges for it. This is the only husband in Skyrim you have to pay before he'll even look at you. 500 gold. That's his price. You walk into the Bee and Barb in Riften, and there he is, an Imperial Destruction mage sitting around waiting for someone to meet his fee. Most husbands require you to complete quests, join factions, or prove yourself through combat. Mercurio requires a transaction. You pay the man his 500 gold, he follows you around, and that hire is literally all it takes to unlock marriage. No fetch quests, no faction reputation, just cold, hard septums. And here's the thing, he's worth every coin. Mercurio's primary weapon is Chain Lightning, and if you've never seen this spell tear through a group of enemies, you're missing out. Chain Lightning doesn't just hit one target, it arcs between them, jumping from body to body, frying everything in a cluster. Draugr lined up in a hallway, cooked, bandits grouped around a campfire, gone. He throws destruction magic like he's personally offended by everything in the room and against anything that conducts electricity. He he's absolutely devastated. His level cap sits at 40, which is respectable, but not elite. And like most mage followers, he has one glaring weakness. When his magicka runs dry, he's forced to pull out a weapon and swing it around like a guy who's never held a sword in his life, because he hasn't. He's a mage. Watching Marcurio try to melee fight is genuinely painful. But here's where it gets interesting. Players discovered that if you recruit Marcurio at low levels and hit him with the Wabbajack, the Daedric staff that randomly transforms targets, it can reset his statistics to optimize tiers. This exploit effectively unlocks his full potential regardless of when you find him, and it generated massive community discussion about follower optimization. Personality-wise, Marcurio knows exactly how good he is, and he will tell you, repeatedly. He's arrogant, confident, and genuinely entertaining in a way that humble husbands simply aren't. He doesn't thank you for the opportunity to follow you. He acts like you're lucky he said yes, solid A tier, genuine combat utility, a personality you'll actually remember, and the only husband with an entry fee. But if you think paying 500 gold for a husband is dramatic, wait until you meet the Companions brothers who make you earn their respect through blood. Vilkas. Welcome to S tier. This is where the list gets genuinely exciting, because Vilkas isn't just good at one thing. He's good at everything. The game describes Vilkas as the mind to Farkas's muscle. And unlike most character descriptions in Skyrim, this one actually holds up. Vilkas is the intellectual twin of the Companions, a warrior who engages thoughtfully with the guild's philosophy, respects its legacy, and has real presence in his dialogue. He doesn't just swing a sword and grunt, he thinks about why he's swinging it. But here's the thing, personality alone doesn't get you into S tier. What gets you here is the combination of personality and mechanical dominance, and Vilkas delivers both. Let's talk numbers. At level 50, Vilkas carries 635 health points, putting him among the highest health pools of any follower in the game. His skill spread covers two-handed, heavy armor, block, archery, and one-handed, giving him more combat versatility than most followers who lean on a single weapon type. He can adapt to different engagement ranges instead of just charging in with one strategy. He's not just tougher than most husbands on this list, he's more well-rounded in a fight too. Now let's talk about what really separates him. Vilkas is a master-level two-handed trainer, capable of training you all the way to skill level 90. That alone makes him one of the most mechanically valuable husbands in the entire game for any weapon-focused build. But it gets better. Train with Vilkas, then pickpocket your gold back. Repeat. You now have free skill training to level 90, one of the most powerful economy exploits Skyrim has ever offered. You're essentially married to an infinite skill point machine. And there's one more trick most people miss entirely. A specific questline interaction allows you to recruit an additional companion simultaneously alongside Vilkas, enabling a dual follower setup that shouldn't normally be possible. That's not a mod. That's vanilla Skyrim letting you break its own rules. Marrying him does require completing the entire companion's questline through Glory of the Dead, so he's a reward for genuine investment rather than a shortcut. But that investment pays off massively. The community has debated Vilkas versus Farkas for years, and it always comes down to the same philosophical divide: brains versus brawn, depth versus directness. Both brothers are elite, but Vilkas consistently ranks among the best husbands in the game across forums and tier lists because he offers something almost nobody else on this list achieves: elite combat stats, master-level trainer utility, and an actual personality worth listening to, all in one package. But if you think Vilkas is the definitive answer to the twins' debate, wait until you hear the case for his brother, Farkas. Now let's talk about the other brother, and depending on who you ask, the better one. Farkas matches Vilkas in almost every structural way. Same faction requirements, same questline completion through Glory of the Dead to unlock him as both follower and marriage candidate. Same master-level trainer status, except Farkas covers heavy armor instead of two-handed, training you all the way up to skill level 90. And yes, the same pickpocket exploit works here too. Train heavy armor, pickpocket your gold back. Repeat, free master-level heavy armor training from your own husband. It's a direct mechanical mirror to Vilkas, just in a different specialized domain. At level 50, Farkas reaches 590 health points, with heavy armor and one-handed weapon specialization. That's slightly lower than Vilkas's 635, but let's be real, 590 health is still an absolute tank by Skyrim follower standards. He hits hard, he absorbs damage, and he does not go down easily. But here's where Farkas carves out his own identity, and it goes way beyond numbers. The personality contrast between these two brothers is deliberate and meaningful. Farkas explicitly does not want to be the thinker. He's told you that. He values direct action, honest combat, and straightforward emotional loyalty. Where Vilkas philosophizes about the companion's legacy and questions the nature of their curse, Farkas just wants to fight beside you and make sure you're safe. What he lacks in intellectual complexity, he makes up for in pure sincerity. And for a lot of players, that sincerity hits harder than any poetic dialogue ever could. Then there's the werewolf factor. Farkas's beast form transformation is a genuine combat mechanic that no other marriageable husband in Skyrim can offer. When things get desperate, this man literally turns into a werewolf and starts tearing enemies apart. It's a wildcard element that adds unpredictability and raw power to encounters in a way that spreadsheet comparisons completely fail to capture. Now, the Vilkas versus Farkas debate. This has been going on for years. It's one of the longest-running husband arguments in the entire Skyrim community. Vilkas typically edges ahead in best husband rankings because his personality has more layers, more dialogue depth, more intellectual engagement. But Farkas has an intensely loyal fan base who argue that his emotional directness and physical presence are their own form of depth. And honestly, they're right. Not every form of love needs to be complicated. Sometimes the husband who would walk through a dungeon wall for you without asking a single question is exactly the husband you need. Both brothers are legitimately S tier, but if Vilkas is the husband who challenges you intellectually, Farkas is the husband who would throw himself between you and a dragon without hesitating for even a second. And for the final entry on this list, we're looking at a husband that almost nobody talks about, but absolutely should. Halbarn Ironfur. Okay, so if you've made it this far, you're probably expecting the final entry to be some unstoppable S-tier god of a husband, someone who breaks the game, someone who makes every other candidate on this list look like a waste of time. It's a blacksmith on a volcanic island that most players have never even visited. Halbarn Ironfur is a Nord blacksmith from Thirsk Mead Hall on Solsteam, and he is exclusively available through the Dragonborn DLC. You can't marry him in the base game. You can't even find him in the base game. To unlock Halbarn as a husband, you need to travel to an entirely separate island, complete the Retaking Thirsk questline, help a group of displaced Nords reclaim their mead hall from Reeklings, and then stick around long enough to build a relationship with the guy rebuilding the forge. This is not a husband the game hands you. This is a husband you earn through an entirely separate adventure. And here's the thing. His combat stats are average. His trainer utility is unremarkable. Mechanically, he sits somewhere around Balaman territory, maybe a half step above. He is not the strongest fighter on this list. He is not the most useful follower. He does not break any systems or exploit any loops. So why does he close the list? Because ranking a husband tier list purely on stats misses the entire point of why Skyrim's marriage system exists. Halbarn Ironfur is the husband for players who spent 40, 50, 60 hours on Solstheim, players who rebuilt Thirsk Mead Hall from nothing, players who cleared every dungeon, fought every ash spawn, and turned that frozen volcanic wasteland into something that felt like home. For those players, marrying Halbarn isn't settling for a mid-tier pick. It's choosing someone whose story is woven into the world they actually built. His post-questline commitment to rebuilding the Mead Hall creates a level of settlement integration that Balaman only approximates. He's not just a craftsman you recruited. He's rebuilding an entire Nordic hall alongside you. The community views him as a niche pick, and that's fair. But the players who choose him aren't optimizing. They're role-playing. And for the right character, in the right playthrough, Halbarn is the only husband that makes narrative sense. That's the real thesis of this entire list. Skyrim's marriage system was never really about optimization. It was never about finding the mathematically perfect companion. It was about who you wanted standing in your house when you came home from killing a dragon. Whether that's a street beggar in Windhelm, a werewolf warrior in Whiterun, a sarcastic mage in Riften, or a blacksmith on a volcanic island, the game lets you decide what that relationship means. And that design choice, spread across 35 plus eligible bachelors with wildly different stories, personalities, and mechanical value, is genuinely kind of remarkable. Not every game trusts you with that much freedom. Skyrim always did. The Amulet of Mara. The Amulet of Mara is the key to unlocking Skyrim's entire romance system. Wear it, and over 60 NPCs suddenly see you as a marriage candidate. Before you think it's just a fancy trinket, hear me out. This little amulet changes how the world treats you. You get it by finishing the Book of Love quest at the Temple of Mara in Riften, or finding it in Riften's graveyard. Once equipped, eligible NPCs offer new dialogue options, letting you propose. Say yes, and you'll be married within 24 hours at the temple. Marriage isn't just for show. Your spouse grants a 15% XP Lover's Comfort bonus and generates 100 gold daily. Divorce? Nope. You're stuck unless you mod the game. Here's the kicker. The amulet links to Mara, Skyrim's goddess of love, grounding marriage in the game's mythology. And some players think it's too easy. You can marry almost anyone, which breaks immersion. So role players make their own rules to keep romances feeling real. The amulet isn't just gear. It's the foundation for every Skyrim love story. But if you think it's simple, wait till you meet Alla the Huntress. Alla is a Nord hunter who doesn't want to marry you, which is exactly why you should marry her. Before you roll your eyes, hear me out. She's one of only 3 companions available for marriage, and unlike most Skyrim spouses who exist in a permanent state of please talk to me, Ayla actually has a character arc. She starts by explicitly rejecting the idea of romance. She's independent, she's skilled with a bow, and she's got zero interest in settling down. Then you progress through the companion's questline, and something shifts. She gradually warms to you. By the time you propose with the Amulet of Mara, it actually feels earned rather than transactional. Here's the thing though, she's a werewolf, and if you've gone through the companion's questline with her, you're probably one too. That shared experience creates an actual bond beyond the typical marriage mechanics. Post-marriage, she maintains her hunting lifestyle. She doesn't become a static homemaker waiting by the hearth. She's still Ayla. The community is split on her though. Hardcore fans call her the best marriage option because of that narrative depth. Others argue she's generic compared to what modders have created. There's demand for expanded dialogue specific to her marriage, which tells you the foundation is there but incomplete. Still, if you want a spouse who feels like an actual character rather than a reward, Ayla's your closest option in vanilla Skyrim. Farkas is one of the few male companions you can marry, and he's also one of the most controversial. He's a Nord blacksmith with a noticeable intellectual disability, which shows up in his simple dialogue and limited decision-making abilities. Before you roll your eyes, I can prove it's a big deal. Unlike most marriages in Skyrim, Farkas's romance arc barely exists. There's almost no narrative consent. He never shows romantic interest, and the game offers the marriage option purely as a mechanical feature. He remains focused on melee combat and loyalty to the companions, without any hint of spousal feelings beforehand. Here's where it gets complicated. For male dragonborns looking for a same-sex marriage option without mods, Farkas stands out alongside Mercurio. That's an incredibly limited field in a game with 60+ marriage candidates. Many LGBTQ+ players see marrying Farkas as representation. Despite the ethical gray area surrounding his mental capacity, the community is deeply split. Some avoid marrying him on principle, unwilling to engage with what looks like non-consensual marriage. Others accept that Skyrim treats NPCs as dialogue trees more than real people, and value the rare chance to experience a male same-sex marriage, even if it's far from perfect. So, marrying Farkas shines a light on dark questions about consent, disability, and representation. That's not your typical fairy tale, but it's worth wrestling with. If you think that's a tough call, wait until you hear about Mjol the Lioness. Mjol the Lioness isn't your average romance option. She's a seasoned Nord warrior and former adventurer whose prized sword, Grimsever, was stolen and lost in the Dwemer ruins of Mzinchileft. Before you can even charm her, you have to retrieve that blade from deep underground. Talk about starting a relationship with a dungeon crawl attached. She stands out from other marriage candidates with her weathered, veteran look, a clear nod to her long life of battles and exploration. Unlike many younger love interests, Mjol doesn't hide her age or experience, making her one of the oldest appearing female options in the game. Plus, she openly expresses romantic interest regardless of your character's gender, which means she's one of the rare gender-neutral marriage choices in Skyrim. Interestingly, her marriage quest is optional and can be missed entirely, so some players wander alongside Mjol without ever triggering romance. If you do marry her, she surprises by expressing a desire to finally settle down and leave her adventuring days behind. That's a sharp contrast to the bold, restless fighter she's shown to be before, but here's where it gets complicated. Even after marriage, Mjol frequently references her wild past, refusing to fully embrace domestic life. This contrast fuels one of the most debated arcs in the Skyrim fandom. Is she finally finding peace, or is the game forcing the domestic cage on a free spirit? Her story subverts the classic rescue romance. Retrieving her sword doesn't mean retrieving her soul. If you think complicated warrior romances are interesting, wait until you meet Lydia next. Lydia is the Nord housecarl everyone meets, and many marry, making her essentially Skyrim's default romance option. She's assigned to you right after the Dragon Rising quest and ends up being the first follower most players get. That explains why she's statistically the most married NPC in the entire game. No complex quest lines needed, just slap on the Amulet of Mara and pop the question. Of course, Lydia is best known for the "I used to be an adventurer like you, then I took an arrow in the knee" line. The funny part? That quote only appears when she's in guard mode, not once during marriage dialogue, so you marry this character who never actually says that iconic line afterward. Bethesda's humor or awkward writing? Probably both. Marrying Lydia doesn't lock you into Bree's home as many assume. You can have her move to any house you own, which makes more sense. It avoids frustration for players who like switching homes and keeps her useful. After marriage, Lydia mostly stops actively following, but you can still summon her. It's like asking your housecarl to trade in her sword for a house key, with a convenient fast travel button. Here's the twist. Lydia's story means she's locked into serving the Dragonborn from the start. She feels less like a romantic partner and more like a forced servant, which raises some uncomfortable ethics that many players miss. The game scripts her loyalty as blind obedience, making the relationship feel more like ownership than love. Despite this, Lydia's nostalgia factor is massive. She's the face of early Skyrim for many and inspired countless fanfic, mods, and memes. Yet her shallow writing and forced romance keep her both loved and criticized. But if being stuck with a housecarl turned homemaker feels rough, wait until you meet Mercurio, the mercenary mage with almost zero personality but plenty of fire. Mercurio is the ultimate pick for players who want a mage spouse but don't want to spend days romancing them. You can hire this Breton fire and lightning wizard mercenary at Riften's Bee and Barb Tavern for a quick 500 gold or by proving yourself in battle. Unlike most marriage options, Mercurio can be recruited and married within a couple of hours of meeting. It's like speed dating, but with spells. Before you write him off as just another generic hireling, hear me out. Mercurio is a popular male marriage candidate for Dragonborns of any gender, making him a solid choice for players wanting a straightforward mage spouse. He specializes in destruction magic, throwing fireballs and lightning like it's nobody's business. So if you want a mage spouse who can actually help in combat without awkward dialogue, he's your guy. That said, the marriage itself feels pretty transactional. There's barely any marriage dialogue or personal development. Post-wedding, he relocates freely and provides the standard spouse daily gold income. No mushy scenes, no quests, just congrats, you're married now, here's your magic boyfriend, which, honestly, some players appreciate. Pragmatism over romance and zero fluff. The community loves him for his convenience and magical flair, but opinions split on whether his mercenary backstory adds realism or just makes the whole thing feel like a business arrangement. Hey, I pay you 500 gold, you marry me? Cool. But if you think a transactional romance sounds dull, Muri's story next will definitely hit different. Muri's easily the darkest marriage option in all of Skyrim, and that's putting it politely. She's a Breton apothecary working in Markarth's Hag's Cure, but you don't just stroll in, slap on your Amulet of Mara, and get a sweet happily ever after here. No, to marry Muri, you first have to complete a ruthless Dark Brotherhood contract called Morning Never Comes. Sounds cozy, right? Before you get starry-eyed, here's the catch. The marriage quest locks behind brutally violent requirements. You must kill either Muri's ex-lover, Alain Dufont, or his new partner, Nilsine Shattershield. You're basically forced to murder someone on her behalf. Muri initially fears you, probably for good reason, but then, oddly enough, her gratitude for saving her triggers the possibility of romance. It's a relationship founded on blood, and thanks. She's unique mechanically, too. As an apothecary, she offers alchemy wares and crafting supplies that no other spouse provides, so if you're into brewing potions, Muri's a savvy pick. But post-marriage, her dialogue is sparse, almost like the game forgot she existed beyond being your alchemy vendor and roommate with a dark past. Here's the thing. Marrying Muri forces you to reckon with the ethical mess of romance born from assassination and betrayal. Some players love how this twisted setup adds immersion and edge. Others find it unsettling, like a creepy cautionary tale of love gone wrong and poorly explored in the game's own narrative. But if you think Muri's story is dark, wait until you meet Revan Sadri, the brooding Dunmer Clothier in Windhelm. Revan Sadri is a Dunmer Clothier stuck in Windhelm, which might just be the worst possible place for a dark elf in Skyrim. The city's Nords make it painfully clear they don't want him around. Every day he faces xenophobic insults, treated like he's contaminating their home just by existing. None of that actually matters once you start a romance with him. There's no quest, no personal backstory, no real reason to marry him besides him being available. You put on the Amulet of Mara, ask, and he says yes. That's literally it. His pre-marriage dialogue is polite but generic, like he's an NPC generated by a checklist, rather than a fully fleshed out character. He's grateful, but shows zero signs of having thought about romance before you walked in. After marriage, he turns into a static homemaker with no unique benefits, no new dialogue, and zero acknowledgement of his daily persecution. The game never explores what it means to marry someone who faces constant hate, or how that changes after marriage. It simply doesn't. isn't. Here's where the community steps in. Revan has a small cult following among roleplayers who love projecting depth onto his silence. He becomes a symbol of quiet resistance, refuge, and choosing peace, even if the game won't give him that story. He shows a strange gap. Skyrim's racial tensions are real, but the marriage system ignores them completely. Drakethis is one of the few Argonian marriage options in Skyrim, which already makes him stand out. But here's the kicker. Most players never find him. He's trapped deep inside a Dwemer ruin called Darkwater Pass, locked up by Falmer, and rescuing him is totally optional. No quest markers, no journal entries, just wandering into a ruin and spotting this Argonian miner stuck in a cage. You can save him or walk right past. What really makes Drakethis unique is how he talks. His broken common tongue is rare for Skyrim NPCs, who mostly sound like they all took the same voice acting class. Drakethis sounds like someone still learning the language, which fits since he's not from around here. It's a tiny touch, but it makes him genuinely feel different. The problem? Once you marry him, the game erases all that. No mention of his Falmer captivity trauma, no combat perks, no special dialogue. He just switches to homemaker mode, indistinguishable from any generic spouse. It's a huge tonal whiplash. You rescue a survivor from something truly nasty, then the game acts like you married a shopkeeper. The fandom loves Drakethis for that dark backstory, but it vanishes after the wedding. If one ignored trauma seems bad, just wait until you meet Serana. Serana is a pure-blood vampire, the centerpiece of the Dawnguard DLC, and by every measurable metric, the most desired marriage candidate the community has ever voted on. But the moment you try to propose, the game shuts you down. No dialogue option, no quest. Yeah, just a hard no from the developers. Here's the thing. Serana has more character depth than literally any other recruitable NPC in the game. She's got a personal questline, genuine emotional conflict around her vampirism, family trauma with her mother Valerica, and an actual character arc that evolves throughout Dawnguard. Her dialogue with the Dragonborn shows real emotional stakes, regardless of your gender. She's not a merchant with a personality mod. She's a fully realized person, and that's exactly why you can't marry her. Unlike most NPCs in Skyrim, Serana is locked out of marriage entirely. It's a direct contradiction to Skyrim's entire marriage philosophy, which is basically marry anyone, marry everything. Marriage has zero consequences. But Serana? Serana gets special treatment. She gets restricted. The community rejected this instantly. Serana marriage mods exist across every modding platform. Players didn't just want to marry her, they actively rewrote the game to make it possible because the vanilla restriction felt like punishment for caring about a character too much. The demand was so consistent that mod authors kept updating and re-releasing variations for years. And that's the contradiction that defines her. She's the richest romance option in the entire game, locked behind an invisible wall, while you can marry a random clothier you've never spoken to. The game's saying here's the character you'll actually connect with, but no, you don't get that. It's intentional. It's frustrating. And it's the reason the modding community spent years trying to undo it. But if you think one locked romance is bad, I'd wait until you see what else Bethesda decided you couldn't have. Modding. Skyrim's vanilla romance system is like dating on easy mode. Functional, but shallow enough to feel like just checking boxes. But the modding community said, hold my mead. While far from thousands, there are still hundreds of romance and marriage mods available across both Skyrim and Skyrim Special Edition, adding new depth, new candidates, or entirely new mechanics to Skyrim's love life, transforming it into a full-on romance RPG. These mods aren't just now you can marry this NPC slapjobs either. The heavy hitters add hours of unique quests, meaningful dialogue, and relationship progressions completely absent in the base game. Think Serana or Carlia now with full voice acting expansions, jealousy systems, breakups, and even personality quirks. Want to get divorced? That's a mod feature. Walk away from messy love triangles. Also modded. Vanilla Skyrim doesn't know what hit it. Some mods even introduce brand new romance candidates like custom followers with rich backstories created by the community. The amount of detail across these mods is staggering. One popular mod for Serana alone has been downloaded millions of times. Clearly, the community rejected the idea that marriage is just a 20-minute post-main quest formality. But here's where it gets weird. There's a split fandom culture around this whole modding revolution. Vanilla purists argue mods cheat the game or break immersion, preferring the original story beats. Meanwhile, mod enthusiasts see mods as essential, even mandatory, enhancements that finally give Skyrim marriages emotional weight and drama. And honestly, with hundreds of thousands of downloads across these mods, marriage mods have become mainstream, no longer niche side projects, but fundamental to the Skyrim experience for a ton of players. In other words, the unofficial romance revolution isn't just expanding options, it's rewriting what marriage means in Skyrim's world. And given the vanilla system barely scratched the surface, it's hard to argue that's a bad thing. If you enjoyed this video and want to see every female follower in Elder Scrolls 5 Explained, click the video on the screen now.